We're on.
Really?
We're on.
Okay, good morning, good morning, everyone. Today is November the 18th.
2003.
Thank you very much. I'm Bob Andrade, a docent and librarian here at Palm Springs Air Museum, and naturally a volunteer. Okay, part of our mission is to preserve and teach history of World War II in conjunction with the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. We conduct interviews to all the veterans and civilians who participated in our nation's military conflicts. Today, I'm here at the museum along with Debbie Narz, which is the daughter-in-law of our interviewee, and she's going to help us today. It is my honor and privilege to interview Jack Narz.
Bob?
Thanks for coming, Jack.
My pleasure, Bob.
And the first thing we'd like to ask you is spell your name.
N-A-R-Z, as in zebra.
Okay. And Jack.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where were you born?
Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay. And what was the town?
Louisville. Where is it? On the Ohio River, just south of Indiana, just
Okay,
across the
that's
street,
right,
just across the river from Jeffersonville and New Albany and other places.
Everybody thinks Louisville was the capital, huh?
Now, come on, you can't catch me there. Frankfurt is the capital.
That's just kind of a joke.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, can you tell just a little bit about your family background, where they came from, or the?
Oh, well, both my mother and father were born in Louisville, Kentucky. My father's side of the family, the Narzes, actually I think it was spelled N-A-R-T-Z, came from Alsace-Lorraine, as near as we can figure. And on my mother's side, my grandmother came from Ireland at the age of 16. She came from Ireland straight to Louisville, and that's it. I'm about 3 or 4 generations born in Louisville. I mean, they go a long way back there.
You're not into
side.
genealogy then,
I tried to look it up on a computer, but the computer, I can't handle it.
Yeah, yeah. I just found out the other day I'm a second cousin to Leo Carrillo.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was the guy that played Pancho and Cisco.
Well, he was the official greeter of Los Angeles for years, of Hollywood.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
What an outstanding personality he had.
Yeah,
He was great.
Rose Parade, he never missed a Rose Parade. And
yeah, that's right.
Also, I'm related to Mariano Vallejo. That goes way back to early 1800s. But I'm not into that. Okay. Okay. Now, your mother's maiden name?
Was Fleur, F-L-O-O-R-E. Nellie Catherine Fleur.
Okay, and then you grew up mostly in Louisville.
Oh yeah, my entire life up until the time I went in the Air Corps. Air Corps in those days was spent in Louisville.
Here's something I always like to ask is how was your interpretation? How did you feel during the Depression?
Well, I was, we were just kids. I didn't know there was a depression. I didn't know things were tough. My dad, fortunately, had a job throughout the Depression. Didn't make a lot of money, but we wore patches on our knees and on our elbows, and Dad repaired our shoes and things like that. But we ate, and we didn't suffer at all. We were very, very lucky. We were not poor. We weren't rich. But we got by very well, in fact.
Well, that sounds like my family.
Same thing. We're lucky. Boy, were we lucky.
Yeah, we fed a lot of people, and
Oh yeah, people used to come. Men used to come and knock at the back door and ask for food. And my mother would always have a sandwich for them and a cup of coffee. The guys would sit on the steps of the porch, eat and drink, thank her very much, and off they go down the aisle looking in garbage cans trying to salvage whatever they could.
That seems to be really indicative of that time.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear the story all the time. Except in our time, we had gypsies.
Oh yeah.
You couldn't trust them.
We had gypsies go through Louisville too.
Was that right?
Oh yeah.
You bring in your chickens and everything else.
It was tough, but we didn't know it.
Yeah, but you went all through school. All your schools was in Louisville.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Now, Can you recall, that's kind of a crazy question, but can you recall your first girlfriend? It's in here.
Yeah. It was nothing serious. It's just somebody to dance with. We had a club formed in our grammar when we were in grammar school. Actually, I think you had to be out of grammar school to join the club. But one of the priests put together a club. He made a name out of St. Columba, which was our parish, and he said he wanted to get all the kids together and make them chums, so he called it the Chumba Club. And on weekends, on Friday or Saturday nights, they'd have a jukebox, or in those days a record player, and the kids would get together and dance and drink Coke and stuff like that. And there was one little girl who was just a terrific dancer. Oh boy, she was great. And she taught me to dance, so she would have been my first girlfriend. But as I say, there was nothing serious then. It was just that. We'd go to the church, to the in the old kindergarten room at the school, and on Saturday nights we'd have a little dance.
Okay. Now, can you recall having a job when you were a kid?
Well, I started carrying papers when I was about 12 or 13. I worked 7 days a week. Delivered the afternoon paper Monday through Saturday, and on Sunday morning in the dark I delivered the heavy Sunday morning paper. Yeah.
And, okay, then you went to all through schools. Now, did you go to any college after school?
No, went in the Air Corps.
Yeah, okay.
I worked for about a year after I got out of high school. I think the intention was to work for a year, save some money, and then go to college. But then came December 7th, and that changed everything.
Okay, let me back up just a little bit. There was a war going on, started in 1939. Were you aware? I mean, some people weren't even aware at all. Or were you aware that something
I was
happened?
very aware of it. I was aware of that. I was aware of the RAF, and I applied to the RCAF, the Royal Canadian Air Force, to try to join. I had visions of flying Spitfires and being a hero, shooting down Germans over Europe. So I had tried to join the RCAF. I was probably 16 or 17, and I wrote a letter to whom I don't know, but I got a wonderful answer from the current, at that time, Prime Minister of Canada. Mackenzie King was his name.
Remember that name.
And he thanked me for my interest in the RCAF. You see, if you trained in the RCAF, then they'd send you over to the RAF.
Right.
But he wrote back, believe it or not, saying, you're a little young, we can't take you, but thank you for your interest. And he intimated that if you wait around a little while, I think the United States will be in there with us anyhow, so you'll have a chance down there. But I tried to get in the RCAF. All I wanted to do as a kid was fly an airplane.
Okay, had you flown at all before?
No.
You never flown, I can't.
No, I just used to drive out to Bowman Field, or my dad would take me out there, and I'd sit there all day waiting to watch an airplane land or take off.
Yeah. Now, this is something we will never forget, and you could probably tell me exactly where you were when you heard about Pearl Harbor. Can you?
I was doing my usual thing on a Sunday afternoon. I would take a pencil, and I would help Arturo Toscanini direct the NBC Symphony Orchestra. I would sit and listen to the radio and help him direct. All the family were gone. They used to go to the movies on Sunday afternoons. They had a real cheap price in downtown Louisville. My grandparents, my father, my mother, my brother, my sister, everybody who was around would all pile in one car and go down, and I think for about 10 cents a piece, they could go to the movie from noon until like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That left me at home alone with the radio. And Arturo Toscanini and I conducted the NBC Symphony.
Those are the days of double features, remember?
Oh boy, and how. Newsreels, double features, cartoons, the works.
So now Pearl Harbor had been hit, and of course we're all devastated. Now, what was the first thing you did? I mean, did you go out and join that right away? Or?
The Air Corps lowered the age limit from 21 to 18, and also you no longer had to have 2 years of college to join the aviation cadets. And the minute I heard about those two things being relaxed, if you could pass the equivalent of 2 years of college, and if you could get your parents to sign, you could go down and take the exam. And as soon as I found out about it, I went immediately and took all the tests.
Okay, now I understand they had a lot of fields all over for your pre-flight.
Mm-hmm.
Which one did you go to?
Montgomery. Maxwell Field, Montgomery, Alabama. I think it's now a federal prison.
Okay. Good place.
It seemed like one then. No, yeah, that was where I went for pre-flight.
Okay, what was your washout rate at pre-flight?
You know, I don't know, but it was heartbreaking, I know. Most of the guys were in there to become pilots. And if they washed out, it was a very sad time. What the rate was, I don't remember, but I would guess about 20%.
I think
20, 25%, something like that.
Okay. Now you went through basic training and through flight school, and what was your first plane that you soloed in? How's that?
The Stearman PT-17. It's like flying an umbrella. That was more fun, Bob. I had never had so much fun in my life as in primary flight training. I had a great instructor. He was probably 2 years older than I, and we remained friends up until the time he died about 2 or 3 years ago. Thomas W. Ball, Bill. I took my flight training at Bennettsville, South Carolina. And as I say, I was scared to death the first time I went up. Not afraid of flying. I was just afraid I might be sick or it wouldn't take, I might get airsick. I felt like I had died and gone to heaven first time I went up. I felt so at home in that airplane, and I loved it so much. I thought, oh, I have found something I love to do.
And then, how did it feel the first time that you soloed?
Oh, well, that was, it wasn't bad getting it up. Then all of a sudden you're up there all by yourself. You say, I got to get this damn thing down on the ground somehow without messing up. And the PT-17 was pretty easy to ground loop. And we flew off not paved runways. We flew off grass runways. So it's kind of, the only thing I was worried about was the landing. So I wouldn't ground loop it and wouldn't bounce it. And it came in, everything was fine.
Did you have an effective brake system on that? On the Stearman?
What about it?
An effective braking system.
Not that I know of. Heck, I never had any problem.
What I mean, no characteristics or anything.
Well, you had to be very careful with the brakes, and actually, that's one way you can ground loop. Yeah. And also nose over if you hit them. Yeah, you hit them too hard. But once you got it on the ground was so rough. You just wait, and it would slow down automatically between the bumps in the grass.
Okay, now you qualified on the Stearman, and you got your. And then was it after the Stearman that you got your wings, or did you go into advanced before you got your wings?
I went to basic, which was the old Vultee vibrator, the VT-13, and after basic we flew the North American AT-6, or as the Navy called it, the C-6.
Well, Navy call it SNJ.
Yeah, you're right. SNJ, yeah, same thing. And they were all fun. The only problem I ever had in flight school was in basic, and it wasn't my fault. I had an instructor who, well, he was mad that he was an instructor. He didn't want to be an instructor, and he'd sometimes show up, sometimes he wouldn't. And I was due for my first check ride, and I hardly knew how to get a BT-13 off the ground. And but we worked that out. I would not go into the details, but they got rid of him, and I got a good instructor, and I got through basic. And I had a marvelous instructor in advanced flying school, Lieutenant Ratliff. I'll never forget him. He was great, and that was great fun. Air-to-air ground, air-to-air gunnery, air-to-ground strafing. We did all that stuff.
How many? Then what class were you in?
43B.
43B. Mm-hmm. How many were in that class? They got their wings.
God, I was in the Southeast. So that was Southeast Training Command. Of course, there was the West Coast, the Gulf Coast. I don't know how many training commands. And in the class, I graduated at Spence Field, Moultrie, Georgia. We had at least 100 guys, at least.
Okay. Okay. You got your wings now. What do you remember? What year or what date that you got your wings?
February 15th, 1943.
43. Okay, mm-hmm. The award's been on.
So all my training was in 1942.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So then, what? Now you've got your wings now, and you've been through advanced training, and you're off to your first duty, and aircraft. Where did you go?
That duty was a beauty, if you'll pardon the pun. I was instructed in fighters. I was in the top percentage of my class, and my instructor, I wanted to go overseas immediately and fly, shoot down whatever. And my instructor recommended me for instant transfer to combat. Now, there was a rumor that we were to be transferred upon graduation to New Guinea, where they had some P-40s. And about that time, I guess in December or January or December 42 or January 43, the Japanese did a number on us in New Guinea, and they had very few airplanes and more pilots to fly them than they needed in New Guinea. So that was suddenly done. Our graduation list came out and our assignments in exact alphabetical order, the same number of our serial numbers. We were assigned to instructors, ferry command, and things like that, which really ticked us off because we wanted to get into the war. I was assigned to Wilmington, Delaware, second ferry group, I guess it was. And so off I went and spent the next couple of months sitting in a ready room wondering, when do I fly? What do I fly? Where do I go? We just sat around, you know. Eventually I got to fly in B-25s and B-26s. We flew B-26s across the South Atlantic to North Africa.
Before the Wasps?
They came in the spring or summer of 43. Yeah, they, as a matter of fact, several of them were assigned to Wilmington, Delaware.
How did you feel about that? There's mixed feelings on the Wasps. A lot of men resented them, and a lot of them, you know.
I didn't. Yeah, you know, it didn't bother me at all. I didn't know any of them personally, and I just saw them from a distance. And they had a barracks near where we had our quarters, and I thought it was fine. I thought, you know, this is great. Let them do all the ferrying and stuff in the stateside, and that would give us, you know, more work to do going overseas. And I was dying to get overseas. I wanted to do something besides sit in the ready room in Wilmington, Delaware, waiting to be called to fly a AT-22 to Oklahoma or something silly like that. Pardon?
Okay, then you all this time you put in for overseas, right?
Oh yeah, immediately. Yeah. Oh yeah.
And when did you finally?
Well, finally, I made it January the 1st, 1945. I took a brand new C-46 across the South Atlantic again. That was about my third time across the South Atlantic. I also flew B-26 from California down to Hawaii.
Okay. That was kind of shaky at 26 to Hawaii.
Well, I'll tell you, it was the first time we had. Pardon?
Did you have very much gas when you got there?
None. None. They pulled out the dipstick and it was dry.
It's a long way.
It was 8.5 hours hand flying a B-26. It was the first time they had tried a flight from Long Beach to Hilo. Ordinarily, we went. The ferry division was in Long Beach. You'd fly to San Francisco, RON, and then from San Francisco you'd fly to Hickam.
Right.
Which was shorter, believe it or not, than Long Beach to Hilo. But to save a day or a night, or a day and a night, they decided to try to fly the B-26 from Long Beach to Hilo, and then after you got some gas at Hilo, take it over to Hickam. And so I was the first one to fly
you
from.
Leaned that baby out, huh?
About 8.5 hours of like this. Oh yeah, it was fun though. It was young and dumb, Bob. Yeah. Young and dumb.
Yeah, my first time over there took us 12 hours.
Yeah.
A C-54.
Yeah, that's how we came back, C-54.
Okay, now you're overseas. Okay, now your assignment. Well, first assignment overseas was where?
Mohenberry in the Assam Valley, at the extreme northeastern end of India.
Okay, you took off and you went around with Ascension Island and over.
Oh! You mean to get over there? Yeah, we would go to Miami to Puerto Rico, Burlington Field, from Puerto Rico to Jamaica to British Guiana, which is now I think just plain Guyana. From there to Belém to Natal to Ascension Island over to the Rubber Coast. They used to call it the Rubber Coast, the Gold Coast, etc., and the Ivory Coast in those days. We went to the Rubber Coast, then to Khartoum, and then across into Karachi, and then all across India by way of Agra, and then up into the Assam Valley.
Right. Now, did you? Of course, that was the main route. Now, did you have your log? Do you keep your logbook on that?
Yes, I had it.
I have it.
As a matter of fact, I think my logbook now is at the Camarillo Airport. The Commemorative Air Force has a base up there. I gave them all my memorabilia, my flight jacket and goggles and sunglasses, anything I had is up there at Camarillo. But I had all that, yeah, including the names of my co-pilot and the engineer, and I had passengers. I had 3 or 4 passengers on the trip over from.
Now, at any time you could ask any questions. So if you have anything that you think about, go ahead and ask some questions.
He's talking to my daughter-in-law Debbie now, and Debbie doesn't have any questions, I don't think. No, none.
After she reviews this, she may.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the one being, why did I marry his son? How did I get into this family?
Okay, so now you're at Assam now.
Yeah.
For you that don't know about Assam, that was actually probably would call what do they call it, the trailhead, or
the flight over the hump, the aluminum trail.
Right.
They called we had about 4 or 5 different routes: Able, Baker, Charlie, Easy, Fox, depending upon the height of the mountains. And the further south you went, the easier, the less altitude you had to maintain to get across. But because of the number of guys that went down, they called it the aluminum trail, because you could look down and supposedly see aluminum, but it was.
Okay, tell it. Yeah, but the sparkle from the sun, right? You see that they're down there.
Yeah.
What was like that first? I can just picture myself getting ready to go and knowing that all those people, on the aluminum trail. What was your feeling about that first flight? Was it weather really in your mind?
At that age, I wasn't worried about anything. I was convinced, as most guys were, that nothing was ever going to happen to me. I didn't worry about it at all. The most frightening thing that happened on my first trip across the hump was the fact that when you went over there, you made your first few trips as a co-pilot. And I'd had a lot of time in the left seat of that C-46 at that point. And my first trip across the hump was with a guy, I don't know how he made it through the war. He was not a very good pilot. He scared the hell out of me. And I was more nervous about him than about the terrain in the airplane on the first trip. Other than that, I didn't worry. We had some rough weather. We had terrible weather. We had some rough trips, but I never let it bother me. I just figured nothing was ever going to happen to me, and it didn't. Here I am.
Okay, then when you on the other side, did you land over at Kunming?
At Kunming, yeah. That was the main base on the other side in China. And there were other bases around Kunming, Yunnan,
was Low Wing operating at that time?
Pardon?
Low Wing operating at that time, or was it already taken over by the Japanese? Low Wing. Probably don't remember Low Wing then. That's so the bases around Kunming.
Low Wing?
Called Low Wing, yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Loing.
I don't know anything about it. I never heard that.
Okay.
No.
That's one of the big Flying Tiger bases.
Oh, yeah. Well, we didn't, we were long after the Flying Tigers. They were there in 1940.
41.
And 40.
41.
Really? I thought they were there in 40. 6 months.
They got there about
6 months in
July of 41. And then
I went to the Flying Tiger bases after the war when we won our trips back to China, Burma, India. We went to some of the old.
Did you ever? There's another thing that probably I don't know if anybody's ever asked you this. Did you ever hear the name General Bissell?
Pistol?
Bissell.
Oh, Bissell.
Yes.
Yes. I heard the name. Yes.
Yeah, it's quite a story about Bissell and the hump.
Yeah, of course.
Bissell was a brigadier general, 14th Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, 10th Air Force.
Yeah.
And he was made general one day before Chenault. So there was this big, they didn't like each other. And,
that's probably what I remember about Bissell. Yeah, a little not ill feeling there,
Oh,
jealousy.
yeah, it was quite a bit. It was, that's just another story.
Chenault and Chiang Kai-shek had a compound in Kunming
Oh, yeah.
that they shared. Yeah.
Well, I went to, because I was at his house so, a couple years ago. I went to
Oh, really?
Chenault's house.
Oh, yeah.
A little house there, and there's 10 families in it. Okay, now you're flying. You're flying the Hump. Now, how many trips did you make?
98 round trips.
98. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Some didn't make one. Some didn't make one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, some made half of one. Yeah, I was very lucky. I crossed that thing 196 times.
Big book over there, and we'll let him kind of explain what that book's about. Yes, please.
Oh yeah. Well, this is about the guys that went down. This is from the Aluminum Trail, I guess, and it's by the year. These are all the crews that went down over the Hump. There were quite a few guys. We lost a great number.
I understand the first so many, they lost more planes than tonnage they gave. Rather, in other words,
yeah,
they never balanced
it
out.
It was. Boy, I'll tell you. Look at that.
A lot of those all over there.
Yeah, I just looked just a minute ago. Before we started this taping. I was looking for a buddy of mine.
That's the next thing I was going to ask you. Do you have very many?
Yeah, the thing about this guy, we flew together in the States. We ferried a B-26 out to the Navy in 1943 sometime. Let me see, March. His name was Joe Tadich. And he was stationed in Shabwa, which is about 6 or 7 miles from Moenbury. And one day, I was sitting outside my basher doing whatever I was doing, I don't remember. And he came over and says, I just had a funny feeling I ought to come over and say hello to you, Jack. I said, oh, Joe, how are things going? That day, 13th of March, 1445, Joe went down.
With three
all of them, yeah. He was.
Now, when a guy went down, did he have communication, or is it just like the submariners? Or just that was it?
No, ordinarily there was no communication.
Just MIA.
Yeah, and the aircraft hit. There was nothing left. If anybody was alive, they would, spread out their parachutes or something to try to attract attention. Of course, we had a piece of.
In other words, they were expendable.
Oh boy. But what a coincidence. He said, I just had a funny feeling I ought to come over and say hello. And that night, and he went down.
Did you ever get shot at?
No. A lot of guys did. A lot of guys were shot at over there. As a matter of fact, they say that some of the Japanese fighter pilots in training used to come up there and use the guys flying over the Hump as target practice. And I was never shot at that I know of. I was in Kunming and Michino and around certain when there was Japanese activity, but I never.
Well, I've seen some of your maps, and a lot of it would say like to stay out of this area here. Because
we had some maps that were areas uncharted. They didn't know what was there, how high the peaks were. They were still playing. This was 1945. They still had not many, but a few areas were uncharted. They didn't know what was there.
Okay, now you've been flying. Now all of a sudden you hear. When did you hear that the war was over?
Well, I was overseas for both VE Day and VJ Day. I was overseas for 3 big occasions: Roosevelt's death.
You remember that?
Yeah, VE Day and VJ Day. I was overseas for all 3 of them, and. It was, it didn't matter. I would like to have been in the States for the celebrations. We had our own celebration over there on VE Day. Somebody burned down the officer's latrine, which was about a 4 or 5 holer. It was all made out of straw and thatch. And our CEO said, all right, you guys.
It wasn't even Halloween.
We're not going to rebuild it. So, yeah, guys, we had to sit out in the open from then till the war ended.
Okay, why don't can you kind of pan over to the airplane there and kind of talk a little bit about that airplane?
Yeah, there's the old. This is up at this is China Doll, This airplane is up at Camarillo right now, along with Tinkerbell. There are two C-46s up there. This airplane was built in 1945, as I recall, and it never left the country. But I flew this one 2 years ago up to McCord. They were dedicating a C-17 dedicated to the memory of the hump operation, and at that time was called the Confederate Air Force. And they said, when we got in this, they asked me, would you want to go up in the C-46? I said, sure, I'd love to. So we got it off the ground, and Jerry Barber said, would you want to fly it? I said, heck yeah, I want to fly it.
Right.
And I sat down in the seat, and I swear to God, everything was right where it was 55 years ago. It was just like old home week. And we had to have the autopilot was out, so it was the Mexican autopilot, Manuel.
Yeah, Manuel.
We had the Manuel fly it all the way up and all the way back. But I got about 10 hours in the left and right seat of this bird a couple of years ago.
That was a thrill, wasn't it?
Oh, it was a
Very few
kick.
people have been able
I
to
didn't
do that.
realize how noisy that thing was, and how heavy it was. But oh, what a kick! What a kick to fly it. Yeah, that's the bird. I'll tell you, that thing. We went through weather on the hump like you wouldn't believe, Bob. I don't know how these airplanes held together, but they did. It's a wonderful.
And downdrafts and.
Oh, you could hit a downdraft and you could lose, while you're talking about it, lose a couple of thousand feet. Just wham! You should be sitting here, both you and the co-pilot, just pulling back as hard as you can on the yoke, with everything as far forward as it would go, and still go down, and then all of a sudden up you'd go, and you'd have everything going this way. It was amazing. That's why a lot of guys bought the farm over there, because they would drift off course. We had winds up to like 150 miles an hour.
Can you imagine in commercial people, they get a little bump and they complain?
Oh, God. They don't know what turbulence is. You don't know what turbulence is until you've had it over that
What were you
hump.
carrying mostly?
Mostly we carried a lot of gasoline. That was always fun, because the drums always leaked, the airplane smelled of gasoline, the oxygen system leaked, the windows were loose and shaking, and the rain and snow was coming in through the windows, and you get boy, I'm saying almost fire, come through the windows and go around your headset. It was all kind.
You have to worry about crosswind in it.
Oh, the crosswinds could be horrendous at times, could really be bad. But then on the other, one other thing, we get hit by lightning quite often, and that was always fun, because it seems like you always got it on the nose and you couldn't see a darn thing for 30 or 40 seconds, and then everything was in a big red ball for a minute or two or three. But the weather was, as I say, terrible, but there were occasions when there would be a day or a night when the weather would be absolutely clear, and you could look down at that mountain range and at the jungles. It was awe-inspiring. I mean, it was beautiful. And at the same time, while you looked at it, you thought, boy, if I ever went down there, nobody'd ever find me, because the tops of those mountains, there was nothing there but snow and rock. And the jungles, you couldn't see the floor.
Yeah, I had a
so
friend that went down over there. It was there 45 days, C-46.
Oh.
45 days up there, and the natives that took care of him, never seen a white man before.
Yeah. Quite a few guys were lucky and did come out. I was very, very lucky and never did go down. But thank God I didn't. And at night, speaking of beautiful, on a clear, full moon night, you could look down and see the ground as though it was like looking at a movie. There was a monastery over on Mount Tali that was, I guess, whitewashed, and it would shine at night. It was beautiful. It was spectacular when you could look down and see the mountains and the jungle. And I had a funny thing happen on a night, like I just described, as clear as a bell, and I got a skip signal. You know what a skip signal is? You know, a radio signal goes up and skips, and it skipped all the way around the world. I was listening to the tower at St. Louis giving landing instructions to a TWA flight at St. Louis, Missouri. And I'm on the other side of the world. And that was the first twinge of homesickness I think I had. I think, oh my God, that's happening right now in St. Louis.
Well, that's how about, okay, now the war's over now, okay?
Yeah.
What's the first thing that when you heard the war's over? What was your first orders after the war?
I was sent back to Cincinnati, and from there
The same route.
Same route coming back.
Okay.
What happened was, how we were assigned this, I don't know, but coming back, I got as far as Karachi, and 4 of us somehow ended up with an old War Weary C-54 to bring home. So we took turns flying it home, and all the way back to Cincinnati, where I was assigned thereafter to Long Beach. I was going to stay in. I was willing to be a career pilot, but things got very different. Didn't have the fuel, didn't have the airplanes. It was murder trying to get your 4 hours in a month, etc., etc. And by that time, I'd had a taste of the good life in Hollywood, of show business, and I decided to try to get into that, into radio. First of all, I instructed in instrument flying at Van Nuys for a short time. Easily just starved to death on those wages. And finally went to school on the GI Bill, and then got into radio and television and motion pictures.
Right. What year was that?
46.
Those are the.
I got out and
That's when that.
I got out in 46, and then got started in the business in spring of 47.
What station did you work with?
Right down the road here, KXOL Central is where I started.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
No kid. That's.
And then I, on my days off, I would drive into Los Angeles and audition wherever they would have me, and then eventually started working there.
Okay, now you're home now, and your wife. How did you meet your wife? Did you know her before you went overseas, or?
My present wife, I met. Let's see, on a blind date. She was dating my roommate, a friend of mine, and she and another gal were going to meet my buddy, and he asked me, "You want to go along?" At a steakhouse in Los Angeles, and that's where I met her. And then some years later, we got married.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, okay. Now, how many children do you have?
4.
4. What are they?
I got 3 boys and a girl, and I have 6 grandkids. 3 grandsons living right here in Indian Wells, and 3 granddaughters that live in the Orange County, the Seal Beach area.
Nobody back in Louisville then?
No, nobody back. As a matter of fact, there are no Narzes left back there at all. Everybody's gone. My brother and my sister and I moved out here to the West Coast. My cousins, who were Narzes, moved to Oklahoma, and now my one cousin is married to a chaplain in the Navy. He was incidentally was the president's chaplain for 4 years.
Oh, is that right?
They lived up at Camp David, and they're all scattered. And then the older generation, they all passed away, so there's none left in Louisville.
Is that right? So
Not one.
transplanted over this way, huh?
Yeah.
A long time ago.
Yes, indeed. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do we have any? Might have any questions? Okay. Wait, one last thing. Do you have any great-grandchildren?
Not yet. Not yet, but I understand, right, Debbie? Well, we don't no, none yet. We'll see.
Well, I got married very young. I have 3 great-grandchildren.
Do you really?
Yes.
Oh, boy, you're
Mine's
too
8
young to
years
have
old.
great-grandchildren, Bob.
What do you enjoy doing now?
Hmm?
What do you enjoy doing now?
Oh, I enjoy trying to play golf now. That's about all I have left to do. More or less retired from the business in 1987 at the age of 65, primarily because the phone stopped ringing. Nobody wanted me anymore. But I have a lot of friends, and my wife and I used to travel extensively up until 9/11, and that has come to a halt now. We don't do much of that anymore. And everybody knows about 9/11.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions there? Okay. Well, listen. This was. I really enjoyed this. It's I'm a historian, and this is one area that I really like. So
Well, thank you,
I wanna
Bob.
thank you
I
again
want to
for
tell you,
coming.
congratulate you on the Air Museum here. This is fantastic here in Palm Springs. It's beautiful. And Bob Pond started the whole thing, didn't he not? Or was he involved?
No, we started. We invited him in.
Oh, did you?
Of course, he had had all the airplanes and the cars and everything.
Oh, is that it? Oh, okay. I knew.
If he got mad, like taking his baseball and bat and going home from the Sandlot, we'd be left with him. So thanks again.
Okay, Bob. Thank you.
This right there. Off.
Okay.
We wanted you to play baseball last year, and you wanted to be a drill instructor, and we needed drill instructors more in baseball purposes. I took care of that for you this year. We're going to want you to play baseball. So I played baseball to get off of the dump. and I've done quite well. I pitched baseball then for about 3 years on various Marine teams. Usually had records of like 15-5 and 17-3 and that kind of stuff. What kind
of other teams? Were all military teams?
Well, no, we played colleges, military teams, industrial league teams up and down the East Coast. We had a schedule of about 60 to 80 games a year, and this was really good baseball. And then the Navy Department, after the war was over, they created the all-Navy sports programs in football, baseball, basketball, and track, and the Marines dominated it for about 3 years, so they discontinued it altogether. But I played in the all-Navy World Series. The Major League Scouts followed us around. We had to be pretty good ball players because we played for the reputation of the Marine Corps, and the New York Yankees in 1948 were spotting me all year long, and they finally approached me at the end of the season and said, we'd like for you to come and join us, and we'll send you to our AAA farm team in Norfolk, Virginia, and we'll bring you up at the end of the season. And that was back in the days of Joe DiMaggio and Whitey Ford in that crowd. That was really tempting, Harry. Here I wanted to baseball, but they didn't have $1 million signing bonuses. I had 9 years in the Marine Corps. I was married and had 2 kids, and I was close to 30 years old. So I said, no, I think I'll just stay here where I'm at. So I let the New York Yankees go.
That's amazing. Now, having trained troops for a whole year, did over your career you run into these guys?
Oh, yes. Well, since you brought up that training, because I went to recruiting duty eventually, and when I was on recruiting duty, I took the Dale Carnegie course in public speaking and winning friends and influencing people, and that really got me a lot of unusual assignments. I wound up in charge. I went back to Parris Island eventually. I was the NCO in charge of the NCO Leadership School on Parris Island for a year or so. I went to Camp Lejeune. I was the NCO in charge of the 1st and 2nd Marine Division NCO Leadership School. The Marine Corps started the First Sergeant Sergeant Major's program, and I was selected to go to that first class. And while I was a student at that class, I didn't know it, but they had already made up their mind they're going to take one of these guys and make him in charge of this school, because we were all field Marines as opposed to administrative, and so that they could say a guy that was a field Marine. I wound up being the NCO in charge of the First Sergeant Sergeant Major School for a while. So I knew I knew the majority of the NCOs for back in my days, back in that period of time. So I had 5 consecutive years after the Korean War was over with in various training capacities, and I always taught leadership and drill. In fact, it was one of the things that really was unusual. In the mid-50s, the Marine Corps wanted to go back, a couple of the old generals, Cates, Pollock, and that crowd. The old drill, the squads right and squads left, they wanted to bring that back. And I was then put in NCO in charge of the drill instructor school to teach the drill instructors on the field this old drill. And they had another NCO school, DI school, that taught the young guys. But my job was to teach the present DIs on the field the old squads right, squads left drill. And my junior drill instructor was the commanding general on the base, Edwin Pollock. Loved that. And every time we had a class, he'd be out there helping me.
Okay.
And they finally dumped it. It was so good. It was so complicated that it wasn't practical. So they dumped that.
Now, during your drill instructor time, were there some incidents that you really remember that with the recruits that kind of stuck in your mind over some of the other ones?
Well, not really. I can say this in all sincerity. The first platoon I brought through, they didn't particularly like me. And the reason for that was I had just come back from overseas, being in combat, and I thought a lot of this Mickey Mouse stuff was just a bunch of crap. You know, treat them decently, be hard, but be fair. None of this Mickey Mouse stuff. And they didn't like. The Marines want to be treated tough so they can brag about it for the next 20 years. So I had to learn how to act, you know, and be obnoxious and all those things.
Get all the verbiages in.
All the verbiages in and all that. So, but I never was one of the yeller and screamers kind of the NCOs. I always thought leadership got you much further down the road. And
Any close order drill in a wall locker? So, you played baseball and you got the dump squared away, but another war is on the horizon here.
Well, I was on recruiting duty when the Korean War started out.
Where was that located?
I enlisted in Evansville, Indiana, and I went back to Evansville, Indiana. And when the reason I wound up on recruiting duty, I was in Quantico on the baseball team, and I didn't particularly like that, and I volunteered for recruiting duty while the special service officer was out of town to fill an immediate quota for recruiter school. And when he came back and found out what I'd done, he was really angry at me, and he gave me some very bad word when I left. But anyway, I wound up going to recruiter school and wound up in Evansville, Indiana. And back in those days, the typical quota for a Marine recruiter was 4 men a month. I thought, man, I've got enough relatives to fill that. You know, I never once got anybody that I knew to join the Marine Corps, but I was one of the. They used to maintain the records of the most productive stations in the country, and I was one of the top 5 of the one-man substations for 22 consecutive months. 22 consecutive months. I got 117 men a month, 1 month in January of 1952.
Now, would you go to the high schools?
High schools everywhere. Was really a high-profile recruiter, done really well. People would say, gee, you're getting them all enlisted, you'll run out of bodies after a while. But I soon discovered the more you got in, the more you got. So anyway, I went from there. The Marine Corps wanted to make sure that everybody got their share of combat, so I wound up over in Korea in Baker Company, 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, and this was in '52. And I was involved in the peace talks had already started. We talked peace all day and fight all night long.
Was that 2nd Marine Division?
1st Marine Division. 1st Marine Division. And I was involved in the Battle of the Hook. The Battle of the Hook was one of the more really pretty good battle in October 26th, 27th, and 28th. And the Battle of the Hook in Korea. There was something like 70 the Gooks actually overrun our lines. I was in B Company, and they overrun our lines. There was something like 71. Within the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, there was something like 71 killed, 341 wounded, 26 or 27 MIAs and stuff like that. So it was a vicious battle, and I was involved in the middle of that.
Now, was that a night attack or a day attack?
Night attacks. Night attacked when they right at dusk in the evening, they really shelled us really bad, and then they followed their infantry, and we had to fall back to the Jamestown line, and then the following day we tried to reman it again, and they run us off, and so it was a no man's land. And finally, on the end of the 3rd day, we reoccupied our position on the front line again on the night of the 28th of October, and the next day. It was estimated that this company area that I was in, we had 27,000 rounds of incoming mortar and artillery fire. I want you to know that's a lot of shooting.
27,000?
27,000 rounds. Lucky I never got hurt. My sweater got ripped off my arm with a piece of shrapnel. I got hit in the leg one time with a tore hole in my dungarees, but never drew any blood, so I was involved in it, but good Lord was with me.
That helps.
Yeah.
Now, when you got to Korea, where were the lines? Were they still in the Pusan perimeter, or were they broken out of that?
Oh, we were broken out of it by then.
Had the Incheon landing been made?
The Incheon landing had already been made, yes.
So they're in retreat?
Oh, yeah. The Panmunjom peace talks had already begun in '52.
So you're up at the 38th?
Yeah, somewhere along there. In fact, the the position that we were on the line, there was 57 yards between our front lines and the enemy front lines. Can you imagine 57 yards opposing armies? You could lob a grenade over there and say, hey, you guys, are you still there? And they turned around and could lob it back at us. But we used to talk peace all day and fight all night.
And so the armistice is signed, and then
No, not then.
not then.
Uh-uh.
How much longer?
I don't remember. I really don't remember.
So when do you get pulled out of Korea?
I came back after about 8 months over there, somewhere early in 1953. I was over there just about 8 months, and I got pulled out and went back to Paris Island.
And what did you do then in Paris?
That's where I got NCO in charge of the NCO Leadership School, and that's when I got all my schooling started.
You're what rank now?
Master Sergeant.
Master Sergeant.
E7, pay grade, enlisted grade E7.
That was as far as you could go.
That was as far as you could go back in those days. And the Marine Corps in the middle 50s recognized they had a problem, and they created a prestige program in pay grade E7. They had 3 ranks within pay grade E7, First Sergeant and Sergeant Major. And I wound up being selected as First Sergeant in those prestige ranks. And eventually I went to Camp Lejeune, where I was the NCO in charge of the NCO Leadership School there. And I got a call one day from a general at headquarters Marine Corps saying they wanted me to come to headquarters Marine Corps. And I was totally amazed. The general by the name of Berkeley, who was a G1 at that time, said that they had went through all 7,000 records of the Master Sergeants in the Marine Corps, and they had written some criteria. They wanted somebody that had field leadership experience in combat, post and station duty, and that's being a DI, and that really ranked really well, and likewise independent duty, the recruiting. So out of that 7,000 Master Sergeants, they selected me to go to headquarters Marine Corps to go into the G1 planning, enlisted plan section, because we had a big morale problem with the senior NCOs, and I was to help solve that morale problem. So I went there in 1956. I went there in 1956, and I was there from 56 through 59. And among the things that I can say that I had a big role in is a recommendation of mine was to create the position of Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. And that was accepted just overnight, and I could have been the First Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. I said, no, I'll stay where I'm at. I can do more good here. In the position I had, I was way above the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps at that time. And then likewise, I was very instrumental in the development of pay grades E8 and E9 within the armed forces.
Was that due to the morale?
That was due to the morale, and the reason for that was within an infantry battalion, there were something like 30 some odd staff NCO positions, but they had 2,000 Master Sergeants. For an example, I can remember being in Korea. There was 5 Master Sergeants in a rifle company. The company commander selected me to be the company First Sergeant. I had 1 of them with me, 2 of them with me, and 2 of them against me. You know, the morale was bad. We had an excess number of Master Sergeants all over the Corps. In fact, we had 2,000 too many. And the truth of the matter is, all the senior ones, they were the guys that was the dead weight. The Young Turks, and I was one of the Young Turks, were the better NCOs. So they gave up the idea of, you know, reducing the last made, because the last made were really the guys that was carrying the ball in the Marine Corps. So I recommended that we somehow distinguish the sergeant majors and the 5 company first sergeants. They ought to stand head and shoulders above everybody else in an infantry unit as far as the enlisted ranks are concerned. Everybody said, that's right. And I can remember a little major we had in our group. There was 5 of us in this enlisted plan section. He said, we can do that, just make them pay grades E8 and E9. I said, that's it. So that's how pay grades E8 and E9 came into being.
You're right, because there were Master Sergeants coming out your ear.
Oh yes, we had them. We had them all over the place.
So,
and that solved the problem to this day. That was the smartest thing we've ever done. We bounced that off of the Army right away, and they immediately jumped on it too, because they had the same problem. The Air Force and the Navy, they didn't have the same structures we did, so they found it a little bit difficult to implement, but rather than be left without, they figured out ways to do it. But that was a good move. To this day, the morale of the troops in the frontline positions, with the positions of first sergeant, sergeant major, is solidified. It's just absolutely outstanding.
I guess normally the fight would be how we're going to pay them. We got to improve their pay if we give them.
Well, they did. In fact, there was 124 of us. When pay grade E8, E9 came into being sometime in late 58, 59, there was 124 of us. The Marine Corps kept their prestige program going to first sergeant, sergeant major within pay grade D7. And DOD bought our first sergeant, sergeant major program, and there was 124 of us went from E7 to E9 overnight. And I was one of them. Man, I had more money suddenly than I knew how to spend.
How'd your wife like and the kids like being up and around the D.C. area?
Oh, well, we enjoyed that. Every Sunday we'd go to the different places. There were three of us that were together on the drill field in Paris Island in 56, wound up there. And we would meet as a families and go out on Sundays and do all the different things in D.C.
Can you remember in your career where you accumulated enough money to buy your own car?
Yeah. I didn't do that until we came back from Panama. From headquarters of the Marine Corps, I went to Panama. This was in the company tour. My wife and kids went over there with us, and this was great. Came back from Panama. I was only E9 in Panama. The Air Force was there, the Army was there, the Navy was there. But here I came with a small Marine detachment of 300 men down there. I was the only E9 on the Canal Zone. I was a big wheel down there. But anyway, I came back with enough money to buy a car and buy a lot to build a house.
And where did you do
This was at Camp Pendleton, and we built in Vista.
And the word, the fact that you were in this budding E9 program, how did the other staff NCOs learn how much you pushed that program? I mean, they must have had a lot of.
Well, okay. Here's how that happened. When I first went to headquarters of the Marine Corps, the Marine Corps really played this up well. They had selected me, the first enlisted man ever, to be into policy-making decisions at the highest level, and they played that up. They had pictures of me in the papers up there, and I was a big wheel, and I immediately went out with the Inspector General on his annual inspections over to the 3rd Marine Division in Okinawa, and they announced that, that I was accompanying the general, and they should arrange talks with the senior NCOs for me to talk to. So this got to be well accepted, and that's when I came back and made the recommendation, we ought to have the position as Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. And General Lissenberg, he jumped on that and said, yeah, he'd done an outstanding job. And while we're talking about an interesting story, I was over there with General Lissenberg on his IG, and statisticians keep statistics on everything, and one of the things they used to keep record of is how many people within a unit had venereal disease. And General Lissenberg asked this one private one day, says, what's the venereal rate over here in this unit? The kid looked a little startled and said, well, it's $2 for enlisted men. I don't know what it is for officers.
Well, how many years are you in the Marine Corps now, Ray?
I wound up with 26 years in the Marine Corps.
You're still not in your twilight yet, are you? You still got a little to go in the Marine Corps before you.
Well, the reason I got out at the end of 26, while we created a position as Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, we also created how they would fill that position in the future. And what they would do, they would convene a group of generals under the Personnel Department there to go through all the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps and select 3 and let the Commandant pick one of those 3. I was one of those 3 for 3 times. The first time, when Bestwick was, I could have been the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, but Bestwick was the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, the first one. Then the 3 that were selected was myself, a guy by the name of McHugh, and a guy by the name of Robber. Well, I knew that I couldn't be because I was completing a tour to the headquarters myself. They selected Robber. The next time they come up with a 3-year tour, they selected 3 again, and it was McHugh, me, and another guy by the name of McDaniels. McHugh was selected. So when McHugh's term was up, again, they selected 3, me, Sweet, and Daniels, and the general. I was over in Okinawa then, and I was a regimental sergeant major in Okinawa, and Sweet was a division sergeant major, and Green, the general, was the division commander, got to be the commandant, and when he got to select out of his 3, he selected Sweet over me because he knew Sweet. I gave up. I said, well, I can't make sergeant major in the Marine Corps, so I quit at 26.
I'm going to shut this down for a second, put a new tape in it.